Testing. Okay, cool. Hi everyone, so my name is Joel, nice to meet you all. This is my first time giving a public talk, but I have seen every kind of Laracon and everything since they started. So yeah, I'm going to be talking today about being your own boss as a developer, and I'll kind of dive into that and why I feel like I have the authority to talk on such a subject. I know it is a big claim, as if I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, just a little bit of kind of housekeeping on who I am. So I am the managing director of Pixel, which is a Laravel-focused digital agency here in Brisbane. So yeah, only a couple of weeks ago, through my chats with Taylor, we got confirmed to be the only official Oceania partner of Laravel in Australia and New Zealand. So that was definitely very exciting to get through that news. So now we're actually an official partner with Laravel. And then, most recently been breaking into some side projects. So haven't really done anything with SaaS related stuff because I've been focusing on growing the business. But most recently just launched Career Lane, which is a job board focused on some AI technology. And that is kind of being branched off into some more exciting projects, which I can't talk about at the moment due to NDA agreements. But there is some very exciting stuff coming out of there. And then just some background on my personal life. So I'm a husband and I'm a father to two girls. Which makes me feel a little bit old, but they are definitely keeping me on my toes. I blog sometimes at joelmao.com. Honestly, not really. It is more of just something I have to say. I do try and get at that content, but life is just very busy with two kids and running your own company. And I post sometimes at x.com, so I wasn't actually going to use x.com. I was going to use Twitter. But anyway, I do agree with everything Elon's doing. So, all right, so I'll just dive a quick look into my journey. I think Elon is doing great things with Twitter, personally. A quick look at my journey. I started off in a pretty interesting space working at a rural internet service provider company. That was probably not the best branch into becoming a developer, as I didn't really work towards the mainstream of what the business was doing. They were delivering high-speed internets to gas and mining camps here in Australia. And I was just focusing on a franchising application that was actually written in Perl being converted over to PHP. So that was all vanilla PHP. That was, Laravel was around back then. That was in 2014, 2015. But it was just the early days. Then went into a Laravel SaaS application, which was built in Laravel. It was athlete management software. So that was actually sports companies being able to manage, their athletes and kind of tracking things like medical appointments when they're out due to injury and stuff like that. Then worked into my first agency, which actually brought me into knowing Laravel and learning Laravel, working with debt collection portals, and I even put in there a prawn management software, which sounds a bit strange, but due to the agriculture industry here in Australia, there is strict guidelines and legal conformances around shrimps and importing them and working with them. So did that with a Laravel application, just working with APIs. Then jumped into Culture Kings. So I'm sure a lot of you would know Culture Kings. They are a streetwear brand here in Australia. They are global now. But I worked with a Laravel API hooking into a .NET application there for their entire warehousing software. So I did some really cool stuff there around tote picking and optimizing that within Laravel. And then just more agencies throughout there. And then in 2021 is where I started my journey being my own boss. So I started Pixel, the agency that I run and manage at the moment. So I think a lot of the reasons why I decided to start and branch off into this is because I wanted to work more with Laravel and kind of work with and define my own hours in the industry. And then I also just wanted to be able to choose the work that I did. There's a lot of mundane work that you can do as a developer, some work that isn't fun and it's really just kind of time consuming and boring. And then I also just wanted to be able to choose the companies I worked with, so work with companies where I truly believed in the motto of the company. Which, so when you're doing any kind of working in an agency, you don't get to choose or pick or make those decisions. You are just kind of working with the technologies and the companies that you're kind of forced to work with. Interesting. I don't know if I can see my notes. So I'm just going to kind of jump into some of the learnings I've had throughout my journey before I jump into kind of showing how you could do this and how I would do it. If I was to start again, how I would jump into this. So, definitely some of the hard points, finding those clients that are worth working for. I think with anyone, I'm in a few kind of freelancing communities, and one of the biggest questions that we always get asked is how to find clients. And then, one of the other hard things is doing good work at a profitable speed. So when you are working with Laravel and you're working with any custom solution software, you end up having to spin up everything all the time, from doing kind of, entire projects, Docker containers, GitHubs, and all of that stuff. So, clients don't always pay you to learn and learn on the job. So it's about, that is some of the hard stuff with working with that. And then some of the other stuff is, solving complex problems in tight deadlines. So some of the recent stuff that Pixel has had to deal with is legal conformance when collecting patient data. We're currently working with a company that does prescriptions here in Australia. So that's definitely been challenging because out of the box, Laravel doesn't have, great kind of streamlined solutions for that level of conformance you need for the legal industries. And then even around, matching free text fields to products using similarity algorithms in PHP. So definitely a lot of things that, when you are doing all the work yourself, you have to consider that there are some hard parts of the job. But then definitely, some of the good stuff, you get to work with awesome clients. So you get to choose all the clients that you work with. You get to work with the ones that you believe in and the ones that kind of treat you well. You get to do good work and you get to solve complex problems, and that's always a win. When you're able to solve a really complex situation or a business logic problem, the amount of kind of joy and satisfaction you get out of seeing the clients, that you've actually just solved something that they could never have solved themselves is always a good win. And then I guess the big one and kind of more towards what Pixel does is supporting businesses who need custom solutions. Where off-the-shelf tools like Shopify, Wix, and kind of Squarespace, they don't solve the current needs that they have. That could be for a variety of reasons, but some of the clients we work with are, just legislative reasons around kind of, medicinal cannabis and working with patient data. And then they might, even have something simple like having subscription software. Shopify is still kind of new to that subscription software. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of kind of goods and bads in kind of working for yourself, but I would say definitely it's mostly good. So yeah, so now I'm going to dive into how I would recommend someone getting started into freelancing and kind of becoming their own boss. So I'll kind of dive through the 5 steps that I would do, except step 5 is kind of just repeating steps 3 and 4. So for the start, I would say you definitely need to kind of look at, you need to establish a baseline on what you want to do and who you want to work with. So that is asking yourself the questions on who do you serve and who do you work with? What problems do you solve and what makes you the expert and the one that can solve the problem? So one of the initial things that I did when I got started was I read this book, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi, which was actually a really good book to read, and I definitely recommend reading that for anyone that, is interested in learning more about that. The basic premise of the book is creating yourself as a subject matter expert and making it so that you could offer someone $100 million to do the work and they have no reason to say no. Well, apart from obviously the budgetary and the financial restrictions, but to create that kind of experience where someone expects that they would be able to pay you $100 million to do the work because you are the person fit for the job. So it's all about kind of establishing that authority in the relationship. They need to know that you are that expert and there is no one else that is better than you in that situation. So that is why kind of whenever you look at kind of anyone that is getting started with freelancing, one of the big questions that we always get asked and we always see in the communities is, well, how do you define what work you want to do and who you want to work with? Sometimes people are of the opinion that they could just kind of serve everyone and do every kind of website, every industry, and kind of every technology stack. And that's it's definitely it is a valid kind of counter argument to the point, but it also kind of doesn't really let you kind of establish yourself as the subject matter expert in whatever industry that you are actually trying to solve. So it would be something like if you are serving plumbers and then you are serving electricians, so those industries don't really overlap in what you're trying to solve. They have different customer bases, they have different reasons for services and the customers needing those services. So then that always obviously kind of expands onto that into, well, how would you know how to do the SEO for that company and get their name out there? So that's why it's always important that I would say just niching down and working out which companies you want to work with and who you can service best. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend doing that from the start. So then step 2, if you wanted to get out and do freelancing and be your own boss, you definitely need to look at, well, what tech stacks you would use to solve those issues. So, obviously we're at a Laravel Meetup, so you may think that Laravel is the solution, but it's not always. There are a lot of people that do successful agencies doing WordPress. WordPress can solve some pretty complicated issues and it has its drawbacks, just such as Laravel. Sometimes Laravel is not actually the quickest solution to spinning up something. So definitely it's important to work out what tech stacks you're able to work with and that you can solve the problems with for that target audience and the target customer base. And then it's definitely worth asking, can you solve the problems efficiently using this tech? Efficiently is that you don't want to be spending a ridiculously large amount of time doing the same thing you do week in and week out, because that is just not commercially or economically viable for anyone. The idea is that you would always kind of be more efficient and grow as you develop and you work in that industry and working with those customers to be able to, get the work done quicker. And I'll talk about it in a later state or a later point, but doing the work quicker doesn't mean you charge less, because I'm definitely very passionate about that. Just because you can do something faster doesn't mean you need to suffer the financial consequences of being better at your job. And then definitely worth asking, do you have any knowledge gaps with the technology? So, a prime example with this, just very relatable, Laravel by default has full page refreshes and just out of the box doesn't actually support single page applications. So if you did have a client come in and say, well, I want a single page app written in React, that has no hard refreshes, data is stated, it's all stored in state, never refreshes. Can you actually solve that if that customer was to come in and ask for that kind of constraint on their project? That's obviously not an issue now in Laravel with Inertia and Livewire. So, Pixel uses the tool stack for every project we do. So, Alpine, JS, Tailwind, Livewire, and Laravel. So all of those kind of questions are actually never questions we get asked. But it's always definitely worth considering is, do you have any knowledge gaps in that technology? Because it's going to be something that you want to kind of iron out before you take yourself to market. So then once you've solved, what clients you're going to work with and you know exactly what tech stacks you're going to use, the next step is finding the clients. And this seems to be the hardest part for everyone that wants to break into this space of doing freelancing and defining your own hours. I think that there is this kind of sense where it's overhyped a lot that clients are actually hard to find. I think that it's probably not as true as people would say. A lot of what you need to do is market yourself and just getting your name out there. So that would be if you're freelancing, you need to really get your name out there on Twitter, LinkedIn, and a personal website, which, showcases the work you've done for yourself or your other clients, showcases what you can do and what you can achieve. That kind of ties into that third point of showcasing your work. So yeah, if you just market yourself, that is how you, not only that helps you to get your name out there, but it also helps to establish yourself as a subject matter expert. Because someone will go to your Twitter profile or your LinkedIn profile and see that you're always tweeting or posting about this content. That just helps to build that relationship authority. Someone can't really question you and say, well, you don't know anything about this topic if you actually just post about that topic all the time on Twitter or LinkedIn. Then the next thing I would say is that's where you start networking. So coming to events like this, going to just events where you would find clients. So I've also already suggested this previously, but coming to programming events is always a good way to do networking. One question I always get asked is, yeah, but they're all developers. They don't need websites. They're not plumbers or they're not electricians. I mean, I don't work with plumbers or electricians. I'm just going to tell you that. We do funner stuff than that, but just it's a common example that everyone can relate to. But yeah, you don't know actually who in this room is actually doing any freelancing at all. You might have person A that does no freelancing, but knows someone that needs someone to do the work. If you go out and network, you get your name out there, you build those relationships, that helps you to, establish that you can do the work, and then they might then think of you next time they're talking to that person that needs that service. So just getting your name out there and networking is always really good. I'd say another thing that you could do is look at Upwork. I would not say go to Fiverr or anything. Upwork has its positives and its negatives. I think that with the way Upwork and Fiverr have treated people offering services, it ends up being a fight to the bottom dollar. Whoever can do the service cheaper. So sometimes it is a bit of a toxic community to be in. You might always try and undercut someone else that's offering something for the same service at a cheaper price. But you've really just got to stick to your guns and, always quote out what you think you're worth on your hourly rate and just make sure that profile shows what you can do. Again, it's always got to link back to your website, your Twitter, your LinkedIn to kind of, build that relationship and that your authority in that space. Then, I think the most powerful way of finding clients is always referrals. If you spend the time doing really good work for your first client, you will naturally always get more work out of that first client. It might be that they just talk to another business that needs the same services as them. They might go to a networking event and get told, hey, do you know anyone that can do a website for me or can do this? Because you've done good work, you are on the forefront of their mind. They will always talk about you. That was exactly how Pixel got started. Pixel had one client to start off with. It was just work that I had done while I was working at my previous job. Built a really good relationship with that client, and then they referred us to 4 other clients, which actually let this dream come true. So we got 4 clients straight out of the bat. So definitely, if you want to get into the space of finding clients, you just need to be marketing yourself and networking and doing good work. I think you can never understate that doing good work does generate more work. And that's something that when you get busy, it's one of the things that always falls is the quality of work that you do. If you're busy and you've got to meet 3 deadlines for 3 different clients, you will naturally always drop the ball on one of them. And that is where you've got to be super careful to not do that, because the minute you don't do quality work is the minute that someone won't refer you or won't, want to use your services again. So step 4 is doing the work. So this is one that just gets easier over time. I think that, Pixel 2 years ago and what I was doing 2 years ago, things were a lot more cumbersome, and especially with where packages coming out, where you can reuse things very easily, like Livewire, Inertia, all of the first party packages from Laravel. I think things are just getting so easy for developers now. It is actually so crazy how quick you can spin up a SaaS application. You don't need to do anything with Laravel Breeze and all of the things that Laravel provides. But, so when you're doing anything more custom like that, doing checkout systems, doing, reporting and exporting of data, that is where, when you have that all for one client, you can always bake it into your agreements that you can reuse that code. You obviously always have to have it stated in the agreement that you will not publish any data and you will not reuse any code that has been specifically written for that client without prior agreements. But building that local repository of code is absolutely incredible. The amount of things that we can do, that I can do personally, just spinning up new websites just by cloning and copy-pasting copy-pasting code from other projects that I've done is just crazy. Especially when you get that really great Alpine JS function and you reuse that, there's nothing better, honestly. Using open source packages is also really good, but the only caveat that I'd add to that is make sure they're well tested. You don't want to use anything that's not well tested or anything that's supported, because the minute you have a client come to you at 12 a.m. on a Sunday night saying this doesn't work, Joel, or this doesn't work, X, and there's nothing you can do to solve that because it's a third-party package that's causing that will honestly kill your soul. So just make sure any packages you use are very well tested and supported. Otherwise, you will have to go down the route in doing your own package. And there's no shame if there is an abandoned package and you need to use that. You can always fork that if you credit the original author. If it's abandoned and it's no longer being updated, then you either look for someone else that's done the same thing, or you do it yourself and you just credit the original author. And then definitely, if you're doing the work yourself, it goes beyond just knowing how to write Laravel. You need to learn how to do Git, do deployments, error tracking. You need to know how to do DNS, so managing domains and all of that stuff. So there's definitely a lot to learn when you want to go onto your own, because you don't have anyone else. If you're working at a company where they have a DevOps guy or a server management team and they manage all the servers, luckily there are tools. Again, there's Laravel Forge, which manages all the configurations for you. Laravel again just offers so many solutions to solving that problem. But yeah, you will ultimately need to know how to dive into a server to debug an issue. So always be prepared to do that. And then I'd say the step 5 is just doing step 3 and 4. So that's networking, that is building your relationship, showcasing your work, and then doing the actual work. I think that once you just get into this rhythm of always baking into your agreements that you can review the platform and write a case study on the platform, that helps to build your authority even more. And then it's just important to keep in mind that it's a marathon and it's not a race. So you just keep doing the work, keep finding ways to work smarter, not harder. Keep networking and keep teaching and showcasing your work. And then, it definitely gets easier. I think that, where I am now, being my own boss, I would say the first 6 months was very stressful. Having a 3-month-old at the time was my first daughter, and trying to make money and bring in, put dinner on the table, it was very stressful. But it definitely gets easier when you build up that portfolio and you build up those case studies. And then, I would say definitely here in Australia, stay on top of your accounting and your taxes, because they will bite you. Don't get me started on taxes. You just don't know taxes until you run your own business here in Australia. Just some tips and tricks here. So the coding part's the easy part. So definitely make sure that you're prepared on that. Writing Laravel is extremely easy when you know what you're doing. That is not the hard part compared to getting your name out there, doing talks, and scheduling time to sit on Twitter and kind of teach people things. When you come from a developer background, writing code is always the easiest part. Definitely keep receipts and track your expenses and invoices. This is more so important for you to make sure that you're still able to put food on the table. Because I would say never go into a freelancing or being your own boss if you're not confident that you can still put dinner on your table. I just don't think, as nice as being your own boss and working in this space is, I don't think it's ever worth not being able to kind of, have that life that you want to have. You've always got to play that happy medium. Then I'd say, so stay on top of your accounting and your taxes. Again, taxes, don't get me started. Track time and tasks. So that's a really good one on, so Pixel uses ClickUp and EverHour. It's an endless search for a solution that does this really well. The amount of times that I've thought of spinning up my own SaaS to do tasks and time management, and then I realized that is a really horrible space to be in because of the amount of data that you would have to track. Reporting is king, so make sure that you're staying on top of those reports to, make sure your bottom line is still good. You are still able to pay all your employees, pay yourself, and then still pay those taxes and kind of continue growing, the freelancing stuff. That's where if you have any onflow or overflow of money, you can reinvest that into, your networking. You can get, LinkedIn Premium, Twitter Premium, and start kind of helping yourself with that. Yeah, and then just quickly to wrap up, one of the other things I would say is just because you get better doesn't mean you get paid less. I think there always needs to be a happy medium. I mean, you can't... Obviously, as a junior developer, if something takes you 10 hours, you should be charging for those 10 hours because that is raw time that you took. But, I don't think that if you can do it in an hour, you should then be charging an hour because that is, you've made a net loss for just being better at what you do. And I don't think that is the way the world should work because I don't think anyone who can make or manufacture anything actually charges less when they optimize their process. So I think development shouldn't be any different. I mean, it's obviously that argument. I don't know if you should be charging 10 hours if you can do it in one. That's a bit, hey, how you going? I mean, but I think you could play that happy medium of charging, somewhere in the middle. It's always just important to make sure that you're still, you're not ripping yourself off by being able to reuse code and, those 20 hours you spent on that Saturday afternoon, you need to be able to charge for those. But yeah, that's it. That's how I'd say you can get started in being your own boss. It's very fun.
Thank you very much, Joel.
Thank
I
you.
like that you found a way to go on Twitter and call it work. So, well
No,
done on
Twitter
that
is
one.
work, absolutely.
And I also like the idea about including things in your contract so you can reuse the code. And I think that's probably what Sparcy has in all of their contracts, right?
Oh, absolutely. The amount of code that Sparty reuses, they have 600 packages. Do you think that they've got developers writing 600 packages every day? I don't know how they would do any billable work. They would definitely be reusing code and then definitely extracting that from their contracts with clients to bring that into the open source community. The more code that you can reuse, it just makes your life so much easier.
And because they're putting the code out there, they're getting their name out there, and
Exactly.
then the
It's more
cycle
networking.
continues. So,
Yeah, exactly.
do we have time for questions, and would you like questions?
Oh, no. Oh, yeah, sorry. I should have questions.
Yes,
are
we
good.
have time for questions. Would you like any questions?
Hello, yes.
Up on the
I'll let
taking
you.
the code that you've written for a client and
I'll get back to this.
using it for whatever other purpose you have you ever had any challenges with that? People saying, no, I don't want you to.
Look, honestly, clients don't actually...
I want to just slightly summarise the question in case the mic...
Sorry, yeah. He just asked if I've ever had any challenges reusing code that I've used for clients. Honestly, I would say it depends on the code you're reusing because I don't want to go on record for saying this, but clients don't always know you're reusing their code. Yeah, it's in the agreement, so it always covers you, but if it's not something that you're actually using, say like a checkout process or a specific process you've developed on the front end, usually you could always, above board is to say, look, I just want to reuse this code. You anonymize it and you don't put their name or their brand on it. But no, yeah, I haven't ever had any issues with that. Yes, hello.
So, as a freelancer, do you work more hours or fewer hours? And compared to like a 9 to 5 person, do you have like a different time period to work?
Yeah, so the question was, do I work more hours as a freelancer and do my time or my hours differ from the 9 to 5? I'd say initially when I got started, I definitely worked more hours. But so now where I'm at is, I have a daughter that has, needs and I have to take 2 hours off on a Monday morning. So it's always really good. I don't ever have to make up that time because I can just take that time off, because we make that up in the billable work throughout the month. I definitely don't work anything more than a 9 to 5 job. And honestly, sometimes I only work 9 till 2. When you optimize your processes and you can do things faster and more efficiently, you can always then, get back that time when you need to. It is, I won't deny it's a hard slog to start off with, but it definitely pays off when you get more efficient at what you're doing. Yes.
You mentioned, when starting out and taking on more clients may mean that you reduce the quality that you're providing. So I suppose, what would you say to someone who is starting out, who finds himself taking on some more clients and where you may have multiple clients, on the go at the same time, but then equally important priorities come through from those clients?
Yeah, okay, so the question was, how would you handle it if you had multiple clients at once and were working on all of those and had equally important priorities come through on those clients? Yeah, no, that's definitely a hard thing that you have to just kind of manage. You have to always, when you have a client come in and say they've got a problem, you have to rank that problem through the discussions with the client and say, well, how urgent is this? You know, for tasks that are very urgent, you know, if the website's down or if something's not functioning, you always need to drop whatever work you're doing to fix that, because you do want to make sure that your clients are always online. But, you know, I think the most important thing is just scheduling the time. It's always having those honest conversations to say, look, I've only got these amount of hours available this month. Does that work for you? You know, obviously, we as developers at a 9-to-5 pace, you know, on a 5-day week, you only get, what's that, like 38 hours? You know, you only get 38 hours a week. So ultimately, you can always sneak in more hours if you've got the time after hours, but it's just all about scheduling and having those honest conversations. I think you'd definitely be surprised that if a client has a deadline, you can always push that deadline out if you communicate. I would say communication is always the most important thing. Unless it's something like a sale period in which, yeah, if you're, you know, like Black Friday, we had to deploy some code for Black Friday and it got pretty crazy there. But then you can always say back to the client, well, you should have communicated this earlier, because I communicate to you, so you should communicate to me. But yeah, no. Okay, cool. Oh, I'll take one more question.
You've had yours.
Yeah, you've had your turn.
When it comes to new clients or new projects and they either need or want upfront estimates or a fixed price or quote on your projects, do you have any tips for how you've come to a point where you're getting accurate with that stuff? Because it always sucks when you quote on something fixed and then you quickly realize, oh shit.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of the challenges, because when you're doing project-based work, you can never get away with charging hourly. And I would also say you never charge hourly on project-based work, because that does have a real opportunity to really annoy a client. It just comes down to that experience. You know, when you've done the work, you know, on your side projects and you know roughly how long that takes, you'll definitely, you know, get better at just estimating that out. But I'd say, you know, most importantly, just always give yourself more time. You know, you always want to make sure that you're not actually copying that bottom line and not able to afford to put food on the table. You know, you've still got to pay yourself. So clients always understand, you know, when you're in this industry, clients understand that development just takes time.
Sorry, how do you handle scope creep on like a project like that?
Yes, I absolutely always say no on scope creep. I just say, look, that wasn't in the agreed scope, so we can do a revision on that and it will add more time. I also always bake that into my contracts. I always say there is no allowance outside of the time that has been quoted, and any additional time will create a variance to the contract. So that's, yeah, definitely make sure you bake that into your contracts, otherwise scope creep is something that is always there. Okay, cool.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Alrighty. All right, so we are going to take a break for how long, Greg?